Hey, it's Aaron. Today I have a question from Chris. Chris wants to know, why are Hondas and Toyotas looked on so favorably for reliability as opposed to other vehicles? Is there really that much difference between the car brands when it comes to reliability? This is a good question. The answer is, yeah, there is difference, but it's not always the same. So what was true 10 years ago is not necessarily true today. What's true today will not necessarily be true tomorrow. And what was true 40 years ago is still not necessarily true today. So let's handle the first part of this question, Hondas and Toyotas and their favorable reliability expectation. This is a combination of two things. The first one is a very carefully crafted persona for the brands. In other words, Toyota and Honda and a couple of other brands early on put a lot of effort into creating a persona of reliability. What I mean by that is they marketed themselves that way, and they crafted and built a reputation for it. At the time when this was happening, this was in the 70s and 80s. When this was happening, it was a pretty easy proposition, especially in North America, because the Detroit automakers they owned the market and they were a little too sure of themselves. And so they emphasized things like power and good looks and profitability, and largely basically ignored reliability. They kind of ran on people will buy a new car every 3 to 5 years. Our cars don't need to last longer than that. And because of that, whether it was a conscious decision or not, because of that, they left themselves open. And the Japanese, who were new to this market, tried to seize advantage of that. So you saw a lot of emphasis on being low cost. That was brands like Datsun were doing that. And then you had a lot of emphasis on reliability, which was really where Toyota started to shine. And then Honda said, ooh, that's working, and also jumped on board with that. And then the second half of that is the actual makings of reliability. So in order to gain the reputation, you can't just say that you are, you kind of have to do it. And so Toyota and Honda, they built on a already existing Japanese tradition of craftsmanship, of being proud of what you produce, and being very, very meticulous about making sure that everything you produce is as good as it can be. And because of that, they had a different culture going on in their factories, in their builds. And that culture was that every single cog in the machine mattered, and every single step in the process mattered. And so any misstep had to be stopped and corrected. So fast forward a few years, go into, say, the late 80s and the 90s, and those companies have built a reputation for that, and now they're building in the US. So they have opened factories here in the States. And in doing so, it was greatly showcased the difference in how they operated. So a good example is the NUMMI plant, which is now the Tesla plant in Fremont, California. So you have this plant that was both Chevrolet and Toyota at the same time. But what the Chevrolet people found and learned was that when the Toyota production was happening, when those people were working, when something happened along the line, something wasn't right with the vehicle that was in front of some worker at any particular moment, that worker had the power to literally stop production and get that fixed, repaired, or pulled off the line. This was unheard of in U.S. manufacturing. Stopping the line was a giant no-no. There had to be serious reasons for it, because every hour that line was not running was money, a lot of money. And so workers were not encouraged to stop production for any reason. Whereas the Japanese makes, they had a completely different thought on this. And again, not only were they marketing reliability, they were actually doing it. And that's where that reputation came from. Now, we have other brands that have attempted to follow the suit and do the same thing, namely the South Korean companies, Kia, Hyundai, right? They tried to do it through warranties. So they put up huge warranties, more than double the average for the industry. And it worked to a point, but it didn't work as well as they probably hoped. And the reason for that is, one, they were already fighting the juggernauts of Toyota and Honda. So the Toyota brands, Toyota and Lexus, pretty much every year when reliability reports and rankings come out from the various magazines and so on that do that, pretty much every year Toyota, Lexus, and Honda are at the top of those lists. And often Acura as well, Honda's luxury arm. So very hard to crack that nut. And then the Kia and Hyundai vehicles were not gaining a reputation for reliability because they also weren't, especially in those early years. They had bad reputations for breaking and then having a hard time finding parts. In a way, you can see that happening right now today as Tesla Motors. They've come out with a lot of vehicles that were super popular and sell really, really well, but now they're starting to get a reputation for being unreliable, not as good as advertised, and problematic. And then that's exacerbated by, if you get in a fender bender, it can be months to get a part to fix your car because Tesla does not bank parts. Most auto manufacturing does. Yeah, so this hopefully answers Chris's question. It was a little bit wordy, but basically Toyota and Honda put a lot of effort into making their brands equal reliability. That's just what it is. And then other brands have not really done that. But every model year is a hit and miss. Sometimes what was terrible last year can be awesome this year. It's a really variable thing. But some brands, like again Toyota and Honda, they have a long-term reputation for always doing it, and that's just what it is. So hopefully this answers your question, Chris. If you got a question, you can hit me up. You can find me down below in the comments. You can find me on most of the socials. Just make sure to DM or tag me. You can find me on places like newatlas.com and cowboystatedaily.com, places like that. Hit me up. You got a question, ask it. I'll do my best to answer it. All right, this has been Aaron. Talk to you again soon.